Hello, welcome to another episode of Beyond the Frets. This is episode 4, and I'm very excited to be here. It is a little awkward to record the very first part of the intro for the podcast because it feels very unnatural, but it'll get better with time. I wish it was like a dream, though, where you just kind of like end up somewhere, like you don't really know how you got there. Like you're suddenly at an Arby's in Wichita, Kansas, you're like 3/4 of the way through the line and you're just kind of thinking about your day, and then you're like, how did I get here? And then you realize you can't remember and that nothing's been real the past 6 years. Anyways, welcome to Beyond the Frets. I'm very excited to be here. It's 8 degrees in Bowling Green, Ohio right now. It's horrible. It's been pretty much 20 degrees or under like the past week, and it's not been fun because I can't afford my heating bill, so I just use a little space heater and I bring it to every room each time I move, because that's just how grad school goes. Okay, this is the most colloquial intro I've had so far. You can tell, the sheer veneer of my professionalism. That veil gets pulled aside real quickly the more I do this. Okay. Some housekeeping things. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast. I've had just wonderful response and feedback from you all. Please keep listening to the podcast, of course, and sharing it with your friends, liking, subscribing, leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts if you can, because that really does help get the podcast out into other people's earworm holes. Again, I want to thank the Mid-American Center for Contemporary Music for supporting this project, and all of you dear listeners for supporting this ongoing adventure. Please write to us at beyondthefretspodcast@gmail.com. Find me on Instagram at beyondthefrets, or just go to beyondthefrets.com. And remember, you can listen to this anywhere. Well, obviously, you know where to listen to it because you're listening to it right now, so I guess that's a moot point. I am incredibly excited for this episode. This is with truly one of my most favorite people ever. And I really do mean that. I met Christiansen, I think it was 2014, and he came to Capital University as a guest artist, and he actually needed to borrow a guitar because he brought just a dobro. He was playing with this cool group, and he could only bring the dobro, and he ended up borrowing my Eastman, my beloved Eastman that I've been playing forever. So I took the opportunity to go to his hotel room, drop off the guitar, and then just take a lesson with him. And it was so much fun, and I really gained a lot from him. And over the years, I would always see him at the Gen Conference, and he's come back to Ohio, and I've taken a few other lessons. And he's just always been so super cool and friendly and supportive. Just a guy that is really consummate and completely professional and super ridiculously funny, and just really understands the struggle and the beauty of what it is to be a jazz guitarist in these times. And I'm just really honored to call him somewhat of a mentor and a friend. And I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation with Christiansen. He talks a lot about his role as an educator at Utah State University, where he's been teaching for a while, and really discusses the importance of being a mentor, trying to, figure out what educators need to provide for students in this climate that is so unique and so different, and not just in pandemic COVID times, but just in modern music with, the state of the music industry and the business. Gigs are totally not what they are, or not what they're used to be like, and just the opportunities that we do or don't have as compared to previous generations. I think he finds it very important to bridge all of those gaps. Corey's a really pragmatic guy, and he understands that there's so much more to this music or this lifestyle than just playing your instrument. And he gives a lot of great advice just about professionalism and how important some of those things that don't really take talent are, like wearing the right clothes or being able to do your taxes or thinking about your finances, all of that good fun stuff that they don't really teach you in school, which they should. And I have so many vehement thoughts about, but that's for another day. But besides his role as an educator at Utah State University and also previously starting the guitar program at Indiana University, IU, Corey is a badass player. Seriously, every time he puts out a new record, it just sounds better and better. Which is, as I mentioned in the interview, that almost is a little rare sometimes because a lot of great players sometimes, by the time they're 19 or 20, they're just killing and they just stay killing forever, which is cool. But Corey definitely is an evolving artist, and I really love that about his playing and writing. And one thing that's really poignant about what he kind of presents as an artist and his story is that he's from Utah, but has certainly spent a lot of time in the professional music industry, traveling and touring all over the world, and he really combines that rural and urban element and lifestyle and combining them in a beautiful way that I think is really unique. And he does that specifically by kind of tapping into the American cowboy tradition, both as direct and indirect influence, either actually playing and rearranging some old country or cowboy type tunes, or just using that type of narrative to inspire new compositions. He also has a killing album called La Proxima that highlights his interest and knowledge of Afro-Cuban music. And he has some amazing, real authentic players like Michael Spiro on that. And it's just a whole nother totally opposite end. But, of course, music is all the same when it comes to humans making art together and inspiring others. So without further ado, if you want to learn the secrets of the musical multiverse, sit down, grab an axe, and get abducted. This is Beyond the Frets. There's my cat. And goodbye.
Oh, no.
It's going great. I'm in grad school now. I'm at Bowling Green State University.
Oh, nice. Who's running that program now?
The guy who runs it is David Bixler. He's a killing saxophone player from New York, and my guitar teacher is Ariel Kasler.
Oh, okay. Was she a student of Chris Bazzelli's?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, Chris left probably like 5 years ago or so.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
But you're enjoying studying with Ariel?
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's been really, really nice just to have the accountability and being in school again and just grinding it out. It's pretty awesome.
That's awesome. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And I've got a TA and stuff, so I'm teaching quite a lot and just getting more
awesome.
University experience, which is what I need.
Yeah. Well, that's always a good thing. You'll find that, going to grad school without a TA in some ways is easier. However, if you start looking at going into academia and you want a job, I can just tell you, I'm on those committees. Like, if you see that somebody was a TA, you're like, well, that's, they already have 2 years more experience than somebody else.
Yep.
Right. You do as much as a TA sometimes as a professor does in a different way.
Yeah.
But like the hours that you're crunching is good. I mean, when I look at it, it's like, it's not even about sometimes how well, like maybe you taught. It's just the fact that like, could you juggle that schedule? Like that's an important thing. Like, time management is like, you're just not going to get that without suffering.
Yeah. You have to go through the deep needs.
Yeah, it's just.
In my case, one of the, the faculty is pretty small, but they're kind of down a full-time professor because, long story short, the bass teacher, he was going to retire, but they couldn't rehire, so he's kind of just adjunct. What's that?
Is that Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff Halsey.
Yeah, he's a bad dude, man. I love Jeff.
Super bad.
Tell Jeff I said hi. I haven't talked to him for probably 10 years at least.
Oh, I will, yeah. I see him all the time.
Yeah, he's a stud.
Yeah,
he's a great dude.
Cool. We were hanging out last night.
Man, great player.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. My sister went to Bowling Green and studied with all those guys.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Do you know Emily Wheeler?
I know the name.
And Brent Wheeler, they're down in Texas. That's my sister.
Oh, my gosh. I did not know that.
Yeah, she runs the guitar program or he runs the guitar program now at South Plains Community College
Okay.
outside of Lubbock. Yeah,
Wow. I
yeah,
had no idea that.
yeah. She's really cool, but she went to Bowling Green, so
Okay. Yeah, it's funny. Like I didn't know how deep of a history the school had. I mean, it's been around
thanks.
forever. I mean, Halsey's been there like 38 years.
Yeah, and if I remember right, they might have one of the best music libraries in the country.
It's literally the biggest.
Yeah, I think so.
Crazy.
Yeah,
It's like over a
yeah.
million records or something.
I used to go there and do workshops about every 2 or 3 years, but I haven't done it for a long, long time. So
We got to bring you out because the school
I'd
has
love
a
to come out.
lot of money and a lot of opportunities for bringing people out. I'm not.
Really?
Yeah. So
Oh man, that's awesome.
actually,
Man, that is awesome.
I got a grant to fund this podcast from school, which is cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Trying to make it happen.
Yeah. Well, don't order your Ferrari just yet.
All right.
You can start looking at color options, but
Sure. The sports package,
yeah, exactly.
Hey, we can't all be like you with your cars and motorcycles
What?
and stuff. I said we can't all be like you with the cars and motorcycles.
Oh
You got it
yeah.
made, man.
Oh well,
You figured it out.
It's kind of funny because I always make this joke. It's like basically what that is that's the money all my friends spend on alcohol and drugs.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I don't drink. I've always been clean, and so I've been able to buy motorcycles and Porsches.
It's a pretty good trade-off, I would say.
It's a long-term trade-off. It took me 25 years.
Yep.
But in the moment, there would be people that would argue, no, it's not worth the it's not worth the trade-off.
I mean, on a real level, it's really hard to even just to try to budget and save and think about 20 years in the future. I've sort of been able to get there the older I get. I'm like, oh, I can think 5 years ahead, and that's kind of like weird for me.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing, to think about with that is just, I got some really good advice, like when I was younger. I should say, like, all jokes aside, like this business has been really, it's been really good to me,
Mm-hmm.
like financially, I'm not like rolling in it, but I live a pretty nice lifestyle, and and it's just, I love the music. I like to consider myself an artist. I'm not like I don't think that I've been conducted myself, as an entire sellout, but I have been, pretty careful about decisions I've made. And I always wanted to be in a position where I could say no,
Yeah.
To things. And there's like a certain sense of empowerment or power even that that comes with being able to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say no when you have some control, artistic control, financial control, a few of those things. And one thing was I was playing golf one time with an older guy, and he's like, people that understand interest make money and people who don't spend money. And, I was like, wow, that's some good advice. So it really kept me, like living within my means during like some of the lean years.
Yeah.
I was really careful about like, how I spent my money. And also, when I did get money, I was really careful to get it away from me so I couldn't spend it.
Sure.
And that sounds ridiculous, but like, like things like you buying land, like even if it's just a little bit, like get that away from you. Like
right.
it's you're buying an asset and it's something that you can't spend with a you just can't spend it
Yeah, it's not liquid.
real quick. Yeah. So that was, I mean, that's, all like non-musical stuff, but but it has put me in a position, I mean, like we were kind of joking about the motorcycles and the Porsches and stuff, but like, take that away. What it does is it allows me, one, to do cool projects, because I have, I usually have a budget that I can work with when I fund my own projects, which gives me some artistic control. And it also, it just keeps me doing things it allows me to do things I like to do. And when I'm in a good mood, I'm in a good mood when I'm doing things I like to do, musically or otherwise. When I'm in a good mood, I'm like creative. Like it's a cool cycle, right? Like you can get into like a healthy space with a lot of that. So,
you think teaching has been the thing that's kind of facilitated that, that base level of like?
Oh, totally.
Making
it
it
for
happen.
me.
Yeah.
Real early on in my career, I realized, that I was like, my career, for me to just be happy, has to be multifaceted. I love teaching. I love the human interaction that happens with teaching, and I, it's like, I know people sometimes say, well, I've got to give back and all that stuff. Yeah, we all believe that, but there's also a very selfish aspect of teaching that, for me, which is I get to be around all these really like high energy, brilliant young minds that like kind of keep me young. I mean, there's no other way to say it. It's like, I look at my relationship with younger students as really one of, reciprocation. I mean, it's good that, they get to study with, a guy of my age or vintage who came up during a different time, and even because of the zip code I came up in, we were behind the times 20 years, probably, where I was. So like, and I was talking to some people about this actually last night, but like, even for a guy my age, like I grew up playing 4 nights a week when I was young, real young, like in dance bands,
Wow.
Literally 5 hours a night, Freddie Green, or playing Wyoming bars, from 9 to 2, as a teenager, and, like kind of going through this thing that doesn't really exist anymore. Right. Yeah. And even for people my age, it's kind of, it's kind of a rare thing for somebody to have come up with that. I had a lot of older guys, and I mean, old guys that took me under their wing. And so I had this like experience that, people in their 60s and 70s now, like had that type of experience, of what I had. And it doesn't really exist. So that's kind of a cool thing, or an insight, I think, that, for a middle-aged teacher, I get to share kind of that mindset and perspective. But on the selfish end, I love all the young people, man, because it's, it's like, because the times are different and they keep me excited about music. They keep, you guys that are younger, you get your thumb on the pulse of like what's going on now, because it's socially relevant to you, and it's really good. I mean, like I said, selfishly, it keeps me in a really young and also in like a learning and growth kind of mindset that I really enjoy having that in my life. But the performing thing was going to be tough. I knew that, to like, hey, if you're just going to perform, it's going to be tough. So yeah, I focused a lot on the education aspect of things. I tried to be really thoughtful about, looking forward.
Mm-hmm.
But like I was trying to get into the online learning space really almost before anybody was doing it. Like in the mid 2000s, and I just saw, I was like, this is going to be, important. In fact, I was working on, because I host all my stuff on musiclessons.com right now. That's one of the sites I do, and I was talking to somebody about that, and they had reminded me. They're like, you know what? You told me 18 months ago to get an account and start a studio here, because you said and I don't remember saying this, but they told me, they said, you said all that has to happen is one bad thing and we could all go to online learning, right?
Wow.
And I had kind of forgot it, but I remember, but when he said that, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, that was you that I had this conversation with. And so Zach, it was kind of crazy, because like in March, when the pandemic, shut everything down, it literally took me 3 hours to move my entire life onto online learning.
Wow.
And so I was just lucky that I'd, always kind of been in that space and tried to think about like what the possibilities were,
Well, that makes you such a great teacher and mentor, because you always, like you said, you had those experiences that maybe people my age don't get, but you also have your ear to the ground. You're into technology. You're into just all the new stuff. Like it's a total two-way street.
Yeah. And when you say that, I'm like, I have to admit, in some ways, I'm like the most non-technical guy. Like in some ways, I'm an 80 or 90-year-old man. I mean, really, like on a micro level, I'm probably like a 90-year-old man. On a macro level, I like seeing how all this stuff works on the big level. And I like, this is going to sound kind of, a little bit, a little weird, but like I'm kind of more excited about the macro stuff for everybody else more than me. I'm kind of in a position where I'm okay, like with what I'm doing with my career. I don't need to advance, but like somebody your age, like I love it. I'm like, I love seeing like what the possibilities are for like, the younger generation. There's some things that are really concerning to me also, about that, to be honest. But
like what?
That's a great follow-up question. I'm concerned, and I was just talking with one of my friends in New York about this, that it used to mean something if you had played with certain people.
Yep.
Like it used to mean something if you played with Benny Golson.
Sure.
Or it meant something if you had worked with, and then insert one of 1 million great players, right?
Yeah.
It used to mean something. And now, a lot of young musicians that are, doing what we do don't know who those people are, which is concerning enough.
Sure.
But also there's not like an urgency to find out who those people were. Not as much. And of course there's exceptions. I'm not throwing an entire, age group under the bus at all. I'm just saying, because there's some real positives that happen with this also, right? I mean, for every negative, I mean, that is something I find concerning. But the positive is that the gatekeepers don't have as much power as they used to.
Right.
Right. And that's kind of the trade-off. So I think that it's, I don't know. I've come to terms with the fact that in some ways I'm the salty old guy in the room, but I'm also the one that's like rooting for all the young people to like get it done and stick it to the man.
Sure. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, because I mean, in today's climate, you could very easily have whatever career or exposure without ever playing in one of those Hallmark, mentorship type bands as a sideman.
Right.
I mean, how much do you think of it? I mean, do you think the onus is more on the younger generation, or do you think there's also some aspect of, just lack of gigs for maybe these older people, or that?
Yeah. Well, and I'll take it one step further. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off because you were probably headed here, but like, I think that there's like the generation my age and older has to own the fact that in certain ways, I think we failed the younger musicians. You know, in this sense that like there haven't been as many gigs, and I think a lot of older musicians have not embraced the idea of mentoring as much as maybe we should.
Yeah.
I recognized this several years ago, as I was complaining about that I had played a gig with some younger professionals, and frankly, like the music was not happening, and there was a lot of deficiencies that were, that I felt were really, really apparent, and I was complaining about that, but I was also complaining about a lack of knowledge of just some cultural and professional things and behaviors that I would expect from musicians that I'm working with. And it kind of hit me like a ton of, it kind of helped me. I mean, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I was on the phone complaining with somebody. I was like, man, this is just concerning to me. And then it hit me. I was like, yeah, well, Corey, you have to be the one to change this. Like you're in a position where you can change this. So in Utah, I started a project with a saxophone player named David Halliday that was just called the David Halliday, or the DHCC project, right? And so what we did is we co-led a band. We had an agreement with a club. Once a month, we put a band together and we would do a 6-month run of gigs once a month with younger professionals or more experienced college students. And they had to audition to get into the band. They had to send in they had to send in an audition, like, a video audition or whatever. We kind of ran it like a college, entrance exam. I mean, as far as the playing's concerned. But then they got to play with us, and we would have a different theme every month. Like, okay, it's bebop tunes this month, and like, here are bebop tunes that you need to know, and here's some things you need to think about. And then we would play the gig, and at the club, then for about a half an hour or 45 minutes after the gig, we would like carve out an extra set when the club cleaned out to just sit down and talk to the band.
Wow.
About like what we thought went well, what we thought didn't go well. And it was everything. Like, you're not wearing the right threads.
Sure.
You showed up 10 minutes before the gig, like you can do that maybe if you're a seasoned pro, but like if you're the young person in the band, you should be there 45 minutes early to like make sure your music's together, make sure that like you have time to move things around the bandstand if you need to, to like accommodate and show respect to, the rest of the band, and maybe ask questions about, like the music and some of these things. But it was also things like, I mean, I remember one of the best lessons that I gave the guys is I said, okay, who tipped the waitress on the free meal you got tonight? Because they'd get a free meal, right? And the club would pay them and give them a free meal, and then they were getting this kind of mentoring experience. And like nobody raised their hand. I'm like, okay, so let me tell you what's wrong with this. That waitress is working just like you, right? And so even though it's a complimentary meal, her time was not complimentary.
Yeah, exactly.
Or his time is not complimentary. And I'm like, so if they pour you a water, tip them. If they bring you a free meal, tip them on the full price of the meal, because one, it's just a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Second, there is a good chance that either the bartender or the waiter or waitress is either friends or dating the club owner. Right?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, we've all seen it like a million times, right? So if you take care of the help, they say good things about you to the owner. You'll keep the gig forever.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, if you have friends inside the club, like, you're going to be okay. So, I mean, this seems like really small stuff, right? But, like, you know, it's things that it's those kinds of things that I really realized. I was like, as, you know, as a musician at the age of, you know, like, doing some mentoring, there's a lot of things that we have failed, and we have to do our part to remedy that, you know. And, you know, there's a lot of stuff, you know, in our current culture or whatever of, you know, like, young people versus old people, you know. I mean, I feel that sometimes. And I think that old people really have to kind of step up and say, okay, like, there are systems that don't exist that we all came up through. We got to figure out how to keep that alive, even though you know, even though the game has changed. So I had that project in Salt Lake for a long time. I've always tried to, you know, like, be aware of that at things like, you know, music festivals, guitar festivals, all those kinds of things. That there's just things that were done for me by being around, you know, mentors that was really awesome. And technology has taken some of that opportunity away, but it doesn't mean it should go away.
Yeah. You know, what do you think, you know, the role of school in that? I mean, school is such a different scenario, but sometimes for a lot of people, that's their only opportunity to play and get that mentorship. So how can you kind of bring that real world stuff into the school experience? Because not everyone's going to want to, you know, set up the club thing like you did.
Right. Well, and not everybody can.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
I mean, like, we happen to have a really great forward-thinking club owner, you know, and booking agent that was like, yeah, this is cool. I see what you're trying to do, you know. And yeah, it was, you know, it was pretty, you know, the school thing, you know, there's that kind of double-sided thing again, right? Because it's like, for the music that I like to play, you know, which is jazz, I mean, it's like, look, let's just face it, outside or in the United States, it's dead without academia.
Yeah.
You know, most of the big festivals that pay artists any kind of money are affiliated with some kind of educational, you know, institution. Right. You know, musicians, yeah, they make a little money playing, but most of us make money touring to play, but we're going to make more money doing workshops or residencies. And so it's like, it's kind of interesting, right? You have this culture now where it's like, you go to school to learn music so you can teach music in a school.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of weird. You know, it's become this cyclical thing. But I think, you know, if you're in a program where step one, at least the people you're studying with like recognize that that's a thing, that's the first step.
Yeah. Because
then you can be around them and they start to create, you know, like I've been around a lot of programs where they have really cool stuff going on where the professors will set up things to like blend a real world aspect of learning with, you know, an academic. And I guess some people would argue, and I think when I watch, you know, what I see on Instagram, I think maybe people have accepted that like academia and academic type music really is the real world now. Like that's the real world.
What do you define as academic music?
What was that?
What do you define as academic music?
Well, I think just loosely, it traditionally has been, you know, classical art music and jazz. Right?
Okay.
But I think that's starting to, that's starting to broaden because there are programs, of course, that, you know, will approach, you know, popular music
Sure.
Even country music in an academic way. And what I mean by that is in a systematic way of learning. And here's the maybe the dangerous part, in assessment. Right? Because Charlie Parker never got a grade. Right? I mean, it's like your grade was getting hired by other musicians. That's when you knew that you had gotten an A.
Or a symbol thrown at you.
Yeah. And it is weird. I still struggle with this. I mean, I just, in this way, sometimes I have to really be honest with myself and be like, man, you're a terrible professor, because I hate grading. Like I despise it, because for a couple of different reasons, because I don't think that somebody's final performance in a class or in a recital or whatever is really, is really an accurate reward for the work that's gone in, for a couple of reasons. Because nobody masters this music while they're in school. It's very, very rare, right? I mean, it takes years and years and years outside of school to really understand what it is to be, like a jazz musician, or probably even a classical musician, although that tradition is a little different, And so, I almost like to assess my students and give them a grade reward or whatever based on like how well I think they're digesting the material, even if it's slow. Because I've had students, Zach, and you've probably seen it too, that get things very quickly on a surface level.
Yeah. Right.
But then I've had students that like really struggle with the performance aspect of it, but it's because they're really, truly trying to master it on a deep level. And who's going to be better off in 7 years?
Yeah.
It's going to be the student that went slow and deep, right? And so maybe the senior recital is not going to be reflective of somebody that was like, oh, this was our best student, right? But it's like they're going to be the one that's really, really killing it in 7 years.
Yep.
Right. So, there's things that I try to do with my teaching philosophy and my assessment philosophy that are not really the way you would do it in a math class. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you've built curriculums from the ground up for a really, really long time. And it's pretty obvious that what you do works.
Well, I would like to think it works. It's interesting you say it because, we're talking about assessing students. And then one thing that I try to do is assess myself. And, I have these little tests that kind of help keep me in check. Like, okay, so here's one of them. I feel like I'm failing if any of my students start to sound too much like me. That's something that I'm really trying. And I've had it before where I've had students who were like, okay, I get it. Like I'm the closest, three-dimensional version of this music you have. Right. So it's going to be normal that you're going to cop some of my stuff and, some of my sound or some of my ideas. But I've had to have that conversation with students before. And we're like, okay, now you need to stop. Now I'm going to start getting on you about stealing too much of my stuff or my sound or whatever, because that's not why I got into this music, was to sound like anybody else. And it's certainly not how I want to teach it. In fact, I think that's a major fail if I have students that end up sounding like me. I mean, my job is to show you a lot of diverse approaches to the music so that you can start to figure out what it means to be yourself, but not be yourself on a shallow level. Be yourself based on a deep understanding of 20 other great artists that you love and that you were taught in a way that you could steal the most important things about that artist and incorporate that into your personality, right? And so I have these little assessment test that I kind of give myself, where it's like, okay, how are your students doing this semester? Are they this? It's kind of like the pendulum's here and here. Like, are they demonstrating that they understand the music of the masters and can replicate that to a certain degree?
Mm-hmm.
And that degree has to be there, not so you can be a clone, but so that you can understand what you want to take for your own artistry. Right? And once that starts to happen, that's when being a teacher is really fun. Because it doesn't happen as a freshman. It doesn't sometimes happen even as a senior or even as a grad student. But you start to see that it's like, okay, we've got somebody on the path to where they're developing an affection for the music on such a deep level that they're going to end up sounding original.
Yeah. That's such a hard thing in school because, the way you think about it, thinking about, their musical life is not just in this bubble of school. They're going to continue hopefully forever. And you can see that, within them. But in so many programs, you are supposed to be playing at this level, even though you might understand it at this level. It's tough.
Yeah, that's, and there's the trick, right? And there's where, having some.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, it happens.
Internet completely is down.
Actually, I'm pretty impressed with how fast you remedied that glitch.
Hotspot, man. Always buy the unlimited data. It's quite worth it.
Yeah, exactly. That's fun.
I was going to ask, with your undergrad students, how much of the curriculum is kind of similar for everyone and how much of it is personalized?
Yeah, the freshman year, I would say, if you study with me, you're probably 95% of your study is going to be exactly the same as everybody else. There are just some fundamental things that I think, that over, the years of me teaching that like most guitarists have the same gaps in their playing or need to start at the same, level. And so we work through that. But then after that, it's, as far as private lessons go, it's very tailored. The guitar curriculum at Utah State, is really strong in that there are a lot of classes. Just for guitar players, it's, we're not necessarily a jazz, it's not a jazz degree that you get at Utah State. It's a guitar performance degree.
Oh, really? Okay.
And so the styles can be very diverse. If somebody comes to grad school to study with me, they don't have to be a jazz guitarist. We have a finger style specialist, a classical specialist, another jazz guitarist, popular music style. So, that's one of the things that's kind of interesting is it's not like a set genre specific degree.
Gotcha.
When I set it up, I kind of wanted to do that on purpose, was like have it be set up in a way that's like, if somebody wants to come and study at a really, really high level with me, but they happen to be a bluegrass guitar player, like that's okay, because the way that I'm going to teach is going to allow you to do a lot of independent study into the world that you're most interested in. I'm there to just help.
Sure.
As and it's really cool. We have some really great successes. Students come out with really I think original sounds and original ideas.
Yeah. Is that a program you created?
The grad program is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the grad program is something that didn't exist before I got to Utah State.
Okay.
But like you said, you kind of mentioned this. I've had a track record or a career of setting up curriculum in, different schools and different platforms. So this was just something that, and sometimes I'm like, I'm not sure that like on the undergraduate level, that maybe that is the best way for us to proceed. I think that, I don't know. The jury's kind of out with me. I mean, I like working with the students because there's so much individuality that we get to explore. Yeah. But from an academic standpoint too, there's kind of strength in numbers, right? And you get numbers with, people in the same degree as far as bassists and drummers and, horn players. But at Utah State, everybody's taking, there's no jazz degree, so you're getting a bass performance degree and a guitar performance degree, and they still do the combos together, and they still play in ensembles together. But there's really some freedom to do some things outside, the standard. Everybody will do this.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, but it's like anything. I mean, you set up a curriculum, you can find pluses and minuses in every situation.
Yeah. So I imagine you're kind of, like you said, you test yourself, you kind of figure out what's working, what's not. Here's some new stuff, just always cycling in and out. It's,
the learning and the teaching relationship really is that, you can't have one without the other, right? Mm-hmm. And to be honest, the more important one is the learning. It's more important than the teaching, I think. I don't want to discredit myself and put myself out of a job, but it really is a partnership. And and so if I was talking to students, I mean, that's what I always tell them when they're making their decision. I'm like, look, you got to think about a couple of things. As a musician, it's different than being an English major. You really go to a school for a personality.
Yeah.
And is that personality going to mesh? I mean, there are some cases where I know people go there I just need the degree. I just need to get out of here, and there's some other, reasons for choosing where they go. But really, it's about relationships, and what you want to do as a teacher is find students that you're hey, we're going to get along.
Yeah.
We can make progress. I'm going to feel good about my day. You're going to feel good about your day. Right. Okay. Then, right. But there's also has to be this other side of it where the student is I think I would enjoy spending part of my day every day with this person who's going to basically make me aware of my deficiencies. Right. And is that going to be done in a way where it's a healthy relationship, mm-hmm. And so, Zach, I mean, I'll be really honest. I've had students where I've been look, this isn't about me being a good person or you being a good person. This is about the fact this is not working out. What I'm able to offer you is not the way that you need to receive it.
Yeah.
And so you need to go find somebody else that fits you better.
Wow.
Sometimes there becomes this animosity, oh, well, he's not doing it my way or she's not doing it my way. And,
sure.
Blah, 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 blah. But I've really tried over the years to look at it and say, yeah, this is just we tried this and it didn't really work out. And so we need to break up. And that doesn't mean
relationship.
It doesn't mean you're bad and it doesn't mean I'm bad. It means this didn't work.
Right.
So and what's really great as a teacher is to have a list of your friends or people that you know about that you're hey, I actually think your personality is going to work with this other teacher.
Sure.
This other teacher is going to be way more in tune and way more capable of giving you information in a way that you're willing to receive it than I am. And here's their number.
Yeah. And
I'm going to call and I'm going to tell them, hey, this didn't work out with me, but here's the reasons why.
Yeah.
And I think they'll work out with you. Isn't life just so much easier when you're in a helpful mindset?
Absolutely.
Right. And when ego is out of the way,
mm-hmm.
When you can say yeah, man, if you were into swinging, you'd be really you'd work out with me, but you don't like West Montgomery. And so, Like,
Yeah.
I think we have to get a divorce. And it's cool. Like, you can take the
Yeah.
cat
Right.
and some of the dishware and
Sure.
the vacuum, and that's cool. And I'll even talk you up to your next.
The next suitor.
Yeah, the next suitor. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that level of humility, it's admirable. And it's probably not easy for a lot of people to do, because a lot of people are like, oh, they're just not good, it's their fault, not mine, or whatever. Not even a fault.
Right. And usually if it doesn't work out, it's our fault. I mean, it's everybody's fault.
Sure.
Just as when somebody succeeds, it's our fault.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like when it succeeds, and I know there's exceptions, right? But like sometimes it's like, because there are cases where it's like, no, this was your fault, or this was my fault. Like, I mean, there are sometimes people just make actions that are like, you just can't defend them. But I think that's really more, the exception.
Yeah.
Than the rule. And I think it's good to be in a space as a teacher where you have confidence to where you say, hey, look, I work out with 80% of the students that I recruit, but maybe 20% I don't, and that's okay. It's not them, it's not me, it's just us.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to get into my Rolodex, my contacts list, and be like, here's like 4 teachers that I think are going to work, Like with my students, Zach, I encourage them, like, while you're studying with me, I'm like, when you have downtime, you need to go study with somebody who's completely different than me.
Mm.
For a while, there was a guitar player who I'm not going to mention that, like, is very creative and very non-traditional. And some people are like, they're not drinking the Kool-Aid, and but I like recognize, I'm like, this guy really is interesting, and it's not about I mean, not at all, like,
Sure.
like there's no bebop happening at all, but I consider him like a jazz musician, an art musician. And I've told my students, I'm like, look, you got spring break and you're hanging out, you need to go spend like a couple days with this guy, because he's going to like help you wire yourself in a different way than me. He's got a perspective that's so opposite of mine that this is going to be a really, really great thing for you. So you quit thinking like me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really healthy thing for teachers to embrace, is encouraging their students to, go to other people.
Absolutely. So, showing them all the possibilities, all the options.
And what's great, Zach, is when you get a student that has learned enough to challenge you and be like, I disagree, or I don't want to do it that way, and have it be based on a place of depth rather than a place of insecurity.
Sure.
Because sometimes students will be like, well, I don't want to do that. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, you have to do that. And the reason you don't is because it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because we're making an artistic decision here.
Yeah.
It's because you're trying to avoid work. But when you get a student that's like, yeah, I disagree, and here's why, and you can have that discussion, oh my gosh. It's like teaching's no longer a job. It's a joy.
Right. Well, you don't want everyone to agree with you all the time. And in any scenario, in any job, it sounds awful.
In any aspect of life.
Yeah.
I know.
That's
why, in such a polarized country that we live in right now, I keep friends, close friends, that are pegged to both sides, because I like them. 2, I want to know how you think. Like that's good. It's challenging for me.
Yep.
So,
yeah. Not to go off the rails too deep, but I do think it's really important to keep those friends and relationships, and not just shut someone out because of what you think they think.
Totally.
Right now, I mean, we can't continue just hating the other half in any scenario. It's not going to work.
No, not at all. I agree with you 100%. I mean, Zach, I mean, you're familiar with my music a little bit. I mean, you know that for 10 years, I have been trying to blend rural music with
Yep.
urban music, right?
Hmm.
I mean, music of the American frontier and old cowboy tunes and all that stuff with the jazz sensibility, the aspects of jazz harmony and jazz rhythm and Afro-Cuban music.
Yeah.
And, this has kind of been my little political statement too, is that our country is
Mm.
has a problem with urban people not understanding the problems of rural people and rural people not understanding the problems of urban people.
Yep.
But when you can get people to have some empathy and start to understand, that's when the magic happens, right? But that's been my huge project for the last decade with my music, is trying to figure out how can the rural exist with the urban and how can the urban exist with the rural.
Right. I hadn't thought of it that explicitly, and I think that means it's working because it's subtle in a way, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm not kidding myself. It's not like my music is going to change anybody, or their political leanings or whatever. But you know what it does? It helps me.
Mm,
It gets me thinking about why that's important.
yeah.
Why it's important to listen, why it's important to understand the strengths of both music, right? Why
Mhm.
why it's important to understand the strengths of both people, And I mean, I'm being really general here because
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
not, a blanket rural people are this way. But if, to go into our election for a minute, you look at the map, it kind of says we have a rural
Yep.
America and we have an urban America, right?
Absolutely.
And it's but it has been something that I've really consciously kind of worked on for 10 years as somebody who is interested in the policies that kind of govern us, but also trying to reconcile these two worlds that I've lived in my entire life, which
Yeah.
is
I was gonna say, I
you
mean,
know
you are both. I mean, you're a product of that combination, that struggle.
totally, in every possible way you could imagine. I am. But and isn't that awesome that those of us that are artists can find ways, whether it be obvious or abstract, to express what we're trying to learn and express what we're trying to figure out, or even express what we have learned, about ourselves through this art form in this really, beautiful and, like you said, subtle way.
Yeah. Yeah, we're very lucky. I mean, to be able to put yourself into something like that with honesty and integrity and humility and
Right.
passion. I mean, not a lot of people get to
Yeah.
ever do that ever.
Yeah. Yeah. As artists, we get to do it. And I think there's a responsibility that comes as being a jazz artist after you kind of have your craft together, to really look at it and say, okay, now what do I do to put
Hmm.
my stamp,
Sure.
on the world, even if nobody ever hears it or sees it,
Yep.
right?
That was something Bixler, the head of our program, we were in class like early on in the semester, and he was like, guys, most of the cats that you love, if they didn't exist, like the music would still be here. Everything just keeps happening. So you just have to like figure out where you are and just be happy with that and not worry about the
Right.
pressure of, I'm going to be the next modern jazz guitar phenom, that kind of thing. And that, like, it seems obvious, but to me, I was like, that's amazing. It's like such a weight lifted off. Like I don't need to worry about, the future or what I need to be at. I just want to do my thing and be happy.
You don't need to worry about being somebody else,
Hmm.
right? I mean, learn from other people, yeah, of course, but at the end of the day, it's all about just putting your life experience together for wherever you are at in the moment, and then putting it out there. And like I said, it might not change anybody, but it's going to change you.
Yeah.
My work with, American folk music and jazz has made me a much better person.
Mm.
And I realized a long time ago that my music wasn't going to get any better until I became a better person.
Wow.
Because you get to a certain level of like technique or harmonic understanding, or like knowing this chord and that chord, and you start to realize it's like that's actually less important than like being a good person. And that might not be what everybody agrees, but that's my philosophy. And so, I've kind of found as I've worked on being a better person, my music gets better.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, because every record you put out, it's just better and better and better. And there aren't all. I mean, not everyone gets better and better and better. Some people just like arrive at a point and like they do their thing. But you just every record, I'm like, oh, this is so killing. It just keeps going like this, man. And I'm super a big admirer of you.
Oh, well, thanks, Zach. That means a lot. I mean, the last record I did was, I was really smart to hire all those Afro-Cuban musicians.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And put myself in an uncomfortable position. And really, I had to listen for like 18 months. I had to study this music. And I'm not a master. I don't understand it. Well, here's what I learned. I know a little bit about Afro-Cuban music, right? Like a little bit, like not even very much. And I'll tell you, there were times in the studio, and it's my record, and I had hired, Mike Spyro to like help me produce it. But, I still had some control, but like, I'd hired him to help produce it. But there were times, Zach, that he literally told me this. I remember there was one moment when I started to say something, and he looked at me and he goes, "Hey, Corey, shut up and let us fix your record." It was so awesome. And I was like,
oh man,
I was like solid. Like he was so direct. Like, I mean, it was just like that. He's like, "Hey, shut up and let us fix your record." And I just started laughing, and I was like, "Cool. Tell me what I'm supposed to do."
Yeah.
And
that's what you want.
It's my record. But like, yeah, but here's the thing. Like, I recognize I'm working with one of the best guys in the world at this specific thing. You know what I should do? Shut up and let him fix my record. Right? Because like every time he opened his mouth, it was genius. Yeah. It was like, oh yeah, that's the right idea. That's the right idea.
Yep.
I've been in projects where I've been like, no, we're not doing that. I've got this is what I want.
Sure.
But with that project, it was like, yeah, okay, you're right. Because I hired the right people.
Yep. It's all about putting yourself in those uncomfortable positions. If you're not uncomfortable, you're probably not doing it right.
You're not doing it right. Yeah, you're exactly right.
But man, I know you got a lesson in a minute. I really appreciate your time. It was a blast talking to you.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate all the work you're doing. I mean, I've been a fan of yours for a long time also. I mean, you're one of the guys that's, really doing it and making a difference. And, you've always had a great, a great attitude, and you've always been serious about the music. And, I wish you all the best.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Let's stay in touch. Okay.
Absolutely. You got it.
Okay. See you, pal.
Later, man.
Bye.
There it is. Time well spent with Mr. Corey Christiansen. Just a true gentleman, super funny and affable person. Of course, an amazing educator and musician. And we should all really aspire to be more like Corey, for real. He's just top notch. So thank you so much for checking out this episode. Again, if you like what you're hearing, please support and share and like the podcast in any way. Any little thing goes a long ways for us, for sure. I'm really looking forward to having a new episode out in 2 weeks. These come out every 2 weeks on Mondays. Be sure to subscribe to wherever you listen to the podcast so you are up to date on each and every new episode. Some upcoming ones I've got with Frank Potenza, Sean Purcell, Brandon Scott Coleman, Taylor Roberts, Kevin Turner, Tim Lurch. I mean, it just doesn't end. I'm so excited about all this. But until then, I hope you have a fantastic and warm couple of weeks. I'll see you next time.